To come to the place where in our great nation we live in a time when millionaires and athletes kneel at the national anthem and disrespect our proud flag. Where we came to a place where it was okay to murder 70 million babies in their mother's wombs and call it a choice. When rich kids from colleges and universities across our nation, with every advantage of education available to them, would march in the streets, attack innocent people, tear down our monuments, and deface our flag and attack people, and call for the destruction of the very nation who gave them their advantages with vulgar, racist hatred. Where freedom of speech is being censored on our college campuses and universities, and cancel culture is seeking to shut the voices off of people who have a differing point of view. When binary marriage between a man and a woman is disrespected and traditional family values and structures are attacked while aberrant sexual practices are forced upon people. How is it that we came to a place where Christianity is vilified and regarded as a mental illness? How did we get here? Well, I'm going to give you my best John Wayne spirit answer. I want you to listen up, pilgrims, and I want you to listen tight, because I'm going to tell you. America and many of the nations of our world have been subjected to a frontal lobotomy. We've lost our mind. Perhaps you've heard that term, frontal lobotomy, before. Let me define it. It's a medical procedure that has been used until the 1980s in the United States to treat certain forms of mental illness like schizophrenia. It's a barbaric procedure done by surgery, chemicals, or even electroshock, where the frontal lobes of a person's brain is deliberately damaged so that their higher cognitive abilities and their ability to reason have been taken away and their personalities are radically changed. The United States and much of the world is suffering from identity dysphoria. Perhaps you've heard that word before. Dysphoria is a mental state where you have a general dissatisfaction with life, dissatisfaction with your personal life. It's accompanied many times by suicidal ideation. And I see this dysphoria among our young people today because so many of them are not only committing physical suicide, but they're committing intellectual suicide. And they're seeking to tear down everything that made this nation great. How did we come to this place? Radical leftist progressives have slowly yet steadily taken over the organs of education, entertainment in our nation. Seminaries and academia have been penetrated by these change agents, and they have one thing in mind: the total destruction of Western civilization and replacing it with a socialist nightmare where personal ideas and personal identity is smothered under a groupthink paradigm. Our national frontal lobotomy is ubiquitous throughout our nation, but especially on our college campuses. Several generations of our youth have been profoundly dumbed down, lobotomized, and rendered ignorant by our pathetic public education system in this nation. We have now also exploding use of psychotropic drugs that are a large factor in school violence, and now violence on our streets with gangs of young people who are attacking anyone who disagrees with them with vicious vulgarity and racial slurs. Our nation's plunge into stupidity was gradual but steady, yet it was also deliberate. It required some time for the evil brain surgeons of progressivism to dumb down our people from our previous state of hyper-awareness about our destiny, our history, and who we are as a people. It took them a great deal of time to do this, and they were largely unchallenged because people were too distracted, earning a living, just living out their lives. William Ross Wallace, who was a poet in the 1800s, said very, very well, "For the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world." Tyrants and dictators for long centuries have understood how important it is to capture the organs of education in a society, because they knew that if they could capture a single generation and indoctrinate them, lobotomize them about their past, and bring them into the new order, they would have them for life. Consequently, as adults, these people, these students grow up and they make what I call conformed decisions. Notice I didn't use the word informed, but conformed decisions about every major area of their lives, including how they vote, how they educate and raise their children, about their financial habits, and about their views on justice and on governance and even spiritual convictions. I want to tell you that liberal progressives often howl loudly about the dangers of indoctrination of our nation's children by conservatives and especially Christians. But you might notice that they have no problem with indoctrination as long as they are doing the indoctrination. When megalomaniacs, Marxist and secular progressives gain control of the organs of power, then government hegemony over education becomes extremely dangerous and serious business. Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler stands as a glaring example among many of how evil governments can and do brainwash their citizens by seizing control of education systems. The pattern is repeated wherever evil forces grasp the controls of education. Stalinist Russia and China are also prime examples. Adolf Hitler once declared in a speech on November 6, 1933, the following words: "When an opponent declares, 'I will not come over to your side,' I calmly say, 'Your child belongs to us already. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else except this new community." One of the very first things that Hitler did when he came to power was to grab control of all of the education organs in Germany, a highly educated country already. He inculcated into the students this idea of Aryan supremacy, of German people and their superiority as white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germans. What resulted from all of this? It was the implementation of extermination programs and policies and Hitler's final solution to the Jewish question. The Nazis believed in the course of their vision that it was necessary to cleanse the German people from genetic pollution. They implemented extermination programs to get rid of people like gypsies and insane or mentally ill people, or certain groups like homosexuals, Christians, and particularly Jewish people. Ironically, Hitler drew much of his philosophical lumber from an American. Margaret Sanger is a prominent figure in our history, a eugenicist who believed that America's gene pool had to be cleansed from undesirables. And she was one of the chief persons who implemented an extermination program commonly called Planned Parenthood. There is great power in education. Some few years ago, I had the privilege of being invited to speak at Punahou School in Hawaii. They asked me to come in and give a week of school assemblies at all grade levels about community service, about sharing their gifts with the world, about bringing about positive changes in the world through the gifted intellect and informed understanding of the world. Based on my experiences as a firefighter and a responder in 9/11, during the terrorist attacks in New York, they wanted me to share with the students how a single person could make a difference. I told them the story of my young daughter, Hannah, at the time 5 years old, who called me one day when I was standing on the rubble pile in New York City, and she asked me a question that changed my life. She said, "Daddy, what are you doing?" And I said, "Honey, some really mean men made a big mess here in New York, and I'm just here trying to help clean it up." And she asked a question that melted my heart. She said, "Daddy, can I bring my little broom and help?" And it put me on my behind. I sat down in the mud. I couldn't stand any longer. She had just asked a question that each and every one of us ask. What can we do? How can we change things? All we have is a little broom. Well, I took my little broom there and other places, and I did what I could do. And I'm continuing to do that with my wife, Claudia. But as I was speaking at Punahou, one of the staff members discovered an article that I had written a few years before where I was critical of radical Islam and their intolerance and cruelty to infidels, or people who are not Islamic. Well, mine was a politically incorrect point of view. And after a 2-hour grueling session with the school president and all of the grade level principals, I was berated and criticized and summarily dismissed from the campus. I kind of wear it as a badge of honor. I had actually read over the extensive list of alumni from Punahou, world leaders that had graduated and gone through there. And their stated objective was to change the world. Well, no one can argue with their success. Barack Hussein Obama graduated from Punahou in 1979. I want to tell you today that this lobotomy that we've endured wasn't just an accident, it was deliberate. It came by careful planning over long, long decades. Just in case anyone is unconvinced of this, I offer the following quote from John Dewey, who is widely regarded as the father of modern public education, who influenced the entire world with his ideas. He was a committed communist socialist who saw within education the ability to change nations by changing the ethos and the paradigm of the nation, starting in the youth. In an article in 1983 written by John Dumphy titled "A Religion for a New Age," published in the Humanist magazine, Dewey is quoted as saying, "I am convinced that the battle for humankind's future must be waged and won in the public school classroom by teachers that correctly perceive their role as proselytizers of a new faith, a religion of humanity that recognizes and respects the spark of what theologians call divinity in every human being. The classroom must and will become an arena of conflict between the old and the new. The rotting corpse of Christianity, together with all of its adjacent evils and misery, and the new faith of humanism. Resplendent with the promise of a world in which the never realized Christian ideal of love thy neighbor will finally be achieved. This has been coming for a long, long time. You might be aware that Karl Marx didn't invent communism. It predated his life by many, many years. In fact, the communist colony of New Harmony, Indiana, was founded by Robert Owen in 1826. That's just 39 years after the signing of our nation's Constitution. One of his associates, Orestes Augustus Brownson, was a close associate, and he laid bare in a speech that he gave in 1853 what their true agenda was. It's called An Oration in Liberal Studies. Dr. Brownson was a committed communist and was converted to Christianity and recanted his former views. In his speech, he expressed the insidious agenda envisioned by those early engineers of progressive education in the following quote: "The great object is to get rid of Christianity and to convert our churches into halls of science. The plan is not to make open attacks upon religion, but to which all parents are compelled to, by law, to send their children to these schools from 12 to 18 months of age, and that they would be indoctrinated. The plan has been successfully pursued, and the whole action of the country on the subject has taken the direction we sought to give it." How could it be that we in America, who once were so aware of God's grace and mercy and of his provision, could be turned within a few decades? In my view, the principal cause is theological. General Douglas MacArthur gave a speech on the deck of the USS Missouri in 1945 at the signing of the peace treaty with Japan. And he said these words: "The problem basically is theological and involves a spiritual recrudescence and improvement of human character that will synchronize with our almost matchless advances in science, art, literature, and all material and cultural developments over the past 2,000 years. It must be of the Spirit if we are to save the flesh." John Adams, in a speech in 1798, said, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is totally inadequate to the government of any other." I found a quote by a survivor of a concentration camp in Germany, a school principal who wrote these words: "Dear teachers, I am the survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no man should witness. Gas chambers built by learned engineers, children poisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, women and babies shot and burned by high school and college graduates. So I am suspicious of education. My request is help your students become humane. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing, arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more humane." Can this be reversed? Can this lobotomy be reversed? It's questionable at this point because so many of our young people have been indoctrinated into this new time. But I want to remind you of something and leave you a little bit of hope. We who trust and believe in God believe that he is first and foremost the source and fountainhead of all our confidence. The Lord of the universe declares the end from the beginning. As surely as he is the Lord and master of our lives, he is also the King of nations. God is not up in heaven chewing his nails going, oh myself, what are we going to do now? He's fully confident, and I think he's completely in control. You see, there's a reason why evil is in the world, and it has to do with that great Reformation pillar. Soli Deo Gloria, to God's glory alone. He will be glorified when he totally overthrows the darkness of this present world. Psalm 37, and I'll end with this today. 1 and 2. Do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. And in verse 9 through 11, 9:11, interestingly, for evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall be no more. Indeed, you will look carefully for his place, but it shall not be found. But the meek shall inherit the earth. What are we to do? If God could do it all, God raises up an Abraham. He raises up a Moses. He raises up a Joshua. He raises up men and women who step on the stage of their times and obey God. And he, working through them, bring about great things. And this is our call to leadership, to follow him and to obey his word. When the righteous bear rule, the people rejoice. But when the wicked are in charge, the people mourn. Let's stop the mourning. Let's step up. Let's be those people that will take our times and grasp that great torch of God's truth and carry it forward into the future. God bless you.